My grandfather grew pears in the backyard. The house always smelled like pears. He would make us French toast, but with cane sugar, not powdered. Once we made creme caramel, and he cracked eggs with a butter knife. I've got an itchy old sweater of his, an antique gum rack, and a silk-lined coat somewhere in the back of my closet. These are all insignificant things and half-memories. There's so much that I don't know about him. There's an infinite number of versions of him that I don't know. My grandfather was born nearly 100 years ago. He was born in Bulgaria in 1919. This man was Tsar, and remained so until he left Bulgaria. There were people, clothes, the traditional fashions. There was music, animals, pets, and mountains. I was born in 1998 in the suburbs of Southern California. This man was president. But I can only remember as far back as this. There were people, fashion, music, animals, and mountains. A year and a half ago, I left the only home I've ever lived in California, to move to a different country for school. I wanted to go somewhere interesting, somewhere vastly different than where I was from, but I don't think that I thought about what that really meant. When I was 11, I visited Bulgaria. Me and my mom, we looked for the house that he grew up in. This was all that was left after all these years. My grandfather wrote, "There was one window. The window was facing west, where Bidasha Mountain was covering the whole horizon. This window, even though consisting of one panel only, had special value to us kids. It is on this window that we would press our noses and watch the first snow on the mountain peak." In 1942, he left Bulgaria to study engineering in Berlin. That's where he met my grandmother. Apparently, she was wading in the water with her friends. After the war, they took a boat to Australia. And then after that, they started a family in Pennsylvania. All these different places and different lives. He lived in that same house for years and years until my grandmother passed away. It's that house that I remember him. I remember that he was good at drawing. He tried to teach me Cyrillic. I used to know the alphabet by heart. He said the best way to learn a language was just to pick up a book. He had these clay busts that he made and sold in Australia. Yet another version of him I didn't know. When he came to live with us, he was quite different than the person my mom knew him as. With the dementia, he'd go back and forth, confusing my mom with my grandmother. Confusing the time, confusing where he was, that he had papers, that he'd forgotten something. Once after he'd already begun living with us, there was a spider in his room, and I went to go kill it, and he said, "He's just doing his best, just like the rest of us." I don't know that he would have said anything like that in the different versions of himself if he hadn't had dementia, if he hadn't been 97 years old. And the grandfather that I knew that lived at my house was different than the grandfather I knew that lived in Pennsylvania and was different than the father that my mom knew him as, and the other million different versions. When he died, his ashes were spread at Mount Vidisha, the mountains he used to look out at through his window in Bulgaria, his home, place where he felt
Yeah, what happened?
most at
Well, I
peace.
was like picking the nectarines this morning. Like Chicken Street, want to go down the bottom. I reached in.